Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided. This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy and other Egan Community Television programming is supported by Thomson Reuters, makers of Westlaw Next and based in Egan. Through Westlaw Next and other innovative online services, Thomson Reuters is the world's leading source of intelligent information for businesses and professionals. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And by U.S. Federal Credit Union, the member-owned financial institution offering service, value, and experience you can trust to the greater Twin Cities community.
Welcome. Access to Democracy is back. Alan Miller interviewing today, and we have a return guest, a favorite guest, Professor David Schultz from Hamline. And I don't know where to start when it comes to accolades or credits about you, because you've done just about everything. And I see you have another new book out, and I say another new book because I don't know how many you have already, but Election Law and Democratic Theory.
Okay.
That's your newest book.
Actually, I have another one coming out very quickly. A new one. It's called Presidential Swing States, Why Only 10 Matter, and it's explaining why the entire presidential race is down to only 10 states. We know what's going to happen in 2016. 40 states are already resolved. It's 10 states, and that's what the book is about.
Well, that's going to be fascinating.
Yes.
Got to get a hold of that one.
And I'll make sure you get a copy.
Now, one of the things I want to say to our viewers is that we have really been hurting for volunteers the last few months. If it wasn't for Raven Miller over here, not a relation, and Larry Lockdown, we would be really short of camera people and people in the control room. Egan TV has helped us so much in that regard. Dave Elbon, Paul Winkles, etc. But there's an opportunity for you to learn the inside of television broadcasting. Anybody interested in volunteering, please contact Egan TV or contact me or contact the Access to Democracy website or our webmaster, Avi Mishar, and we will get you on here. And we will teach you everything from camera to directing. So it's a chance for you, and it's a chance for us to expand our volunteers. Now, back to the issue at hand, Professor Schultz. I want to hand you this sheet of paper. It's got about 25 items that have been driving me crazy. Everything from the TPP to guns and shootings. We had another recent one today as we sit here. So, carte blanche. Pick anything and let's talk about it.
Let's talk about Trump, Carson, and the dysfunctional Republican Party in the House of Representatives. We'll put them all together.
Okay.
All right.
This show is going to go for about 2-3 hours, fellas. Okay. Donald Trump, who is responsible for what this week? He said we should execute Sergeant Bergdahl without a trial.
Correct.
And without knowing any of the material about him.
Right.
He said he is responsible for what else?
I think he was the one who claimed that McCarthy, who's one of the one of the candidates for the Speaker of the House, decided not to move on to try to run for the House. And I'm suspecting Donald Trump will probably claim credit for just about everything else, that he can in life. But those are the let us say the lies of this week, anyhow.
It's unbelievable, and he seems to be holding steady in terms of the polls.
Yeah, he's faded a little bit. I mean, there was sort of this kind of a crest that he got a few weeks ago, but he's certainly not fading to the back of the polls. I mean, if we look at 4 years ago, we had a Rick Perry or others who would kind of burst and then fade away. Trump's probably fading into kind of a more, I don't know, a normal pattern, about 20% in the vote, along with Ben Carson at 20 and Carly Fiorina with about 10. The three outsiders, the no experience people, are leading the pack. And the people like Jeb Bush, who if we were doing this show 4 months ago, you and I would have had a conversation to say, Jeb Bush is the definite leader in the party. He's at 4% in the polls and fading.
Yeah, I would have said Kasich 4 months ago because I think there's a possibility of him surfacing here.
Yeah, Kasich of the Republicans may be the most talented of all the Republicans. Now, that may be an odd phrase to say, but yeah, I've always thought that Kasich had strong potential, but he doesn't seem to be taking fire because this is almost the year for the Republicans of, I'm not sure if I want to say the no experienced or the know-nothings who are doing well, but it's certainly not the Republicans. The Republicans who had all these governors, the Christies, the Perrys, the Walkers from Wisconsin, who they thought were going to be the shining stars. Instead, they've all flamed out.
They do have Rubio, who is rising.
Right.
Who is an attractive personality,
Yeah.
if nothing else.
Yeah.
On the issues, he doesn't rise above anybody else.
No, he doesn't, and he had a relatively bad third quarter fundraising. He raised $6 million, not a lot. I mean, what he has going for him, as you said, he looks good on television. He's younger. He's Hispanic. He's got a lot of things going for him, but he doesn't seem to be otherwise standing out. But there's something else I really want to underscore here, is that even though we look at like Trump, we look at Carly Fiorina of Ben Carson.
For Fiorina, who destroyed Hewlett Packard,
That's
and
right.
they fired her.
They fired her. Her stock fell by 50% while she was the head of Hewlett Packard. Far worse than any other tech company during that time period.
And she destroyed Lucent before that.
Exactly. And so now she wants to do to us what she did to them in terms of their companies. But I was going to say is that when we look at the three front runners and they say they're outsiders, they may be non-politicians, but their positions really are not that far different than the, quote, mainstream candidates. And that's important to understand, that there's not a lot of difference between a Trump, a Rubio, and a Bush, for example, in terms where they stand on all the really critical issues.
And, well, Carson, Dr. Carson, he apparently is a talented neurosurgeon,
Right.
I don't know, but said if, in fact, during World War II, the people of Germany didn't have their weapons taken away by Hitler, that the Jews would have been able to survive the Holocaust, which is one of the most ludicrous things I have ever heard.
Yeah, I agree, but it's consistent with sort of this line. How much different is his line versus the head of the NRA, who constantly says the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun? It's the exact same logic that says that guns are the answer, they're the solution. And Carson, remember, earlier this week also had said something to the effect of that, well, if people had guns, they could have shot back, or they could have responded and simply jumped the shooter, or something like that. Even though all the evidence is that almost nobody would ever do something that foolish.
They had seconds,
Yes.
really seconds, to react
Yeah.
while a gun is spraying at them.
Right.
And what's your reaction? You dive for cover.
They dive for, yeah. I was going to say, many years ago, I did some police academy training because I was teaching criminal justice classes, and we went through sort of the exercises of shoot, don't shoot, to sort of, for self-defense. And the first thing they tell you is protect your own body, hide. And the second thing is that most of us, in fact, almost none of us, even those who've been in the Army, have that instant reaction to say when someone's shooting at you, pull out a gun and shoot back. And so this whole idea that we're just going to have a shootout at the OK Corral as a way to protect ourselves doesn't work.
A few years ago, a doctor on one of the Army bases killed 13 people.
Yes.
Armed. He was, armed they were,
That's
and
right.
he still killed 13 people and survived, got
Exactly.
off the base.
Exactly.
Without getting even a scratch.
Right. And if you think you can get away with murder literally on an Army base, where you have all these weapons around there, what makes us think that arming people in schools is going to solve anything? It's not. The idea of saying that guns are more of the solution is wrong. The other thing I want to talk about here too, if we're talking about this, is that part of, maybe this takes us a little bit away from the Republicans, but this whole debate that we have after every shooting, which we go into this hand-wringing and say it's all about mental illness. It's not all about mental illness. There's a huge stereotype there. You know, we have, I don't know how many tens of millions of people in the United States who have cognitive disorders, who have mental illness. They're not threats. They're not going to go out and kill people. People who are manic depressive aren't going to kill people. It's not an issue of just saying let's just take away guns from mentally ill people or screen more mentally ill people.
And where do you draw the line as
Exactly.
to where in mental illness you would take away the gun? I mean, Carson would take away nobody's gun.
That's right. That's right. And so we're getting back to our main topic here. Is that what we're seeing is Carson? We're seeing Trump make statements that sound ludicrous. But remember, Jeb Bush this past week also said, in reference to what happened in Oregon at the shooting, he said, stuff happens.
Stuff happens. Yep,
Stuff just happens. And just sort of this callous indifferenceness, as if we can't do anything to solve the problem. But this is sort of the whole problem we've been talking about, that we have the Republican candidates, you know, all 16 or 17, whatever number is at this point, you know, who are much closer together on their rhetoric of anti-government, pro-gun, anti-choice, anti-poor
Right.
people.
The abortion issue predominates.
Planned Parenthood, that's right.
Planned Parenthood, Hillary's emails.
That's right.
Anything but the really crucial issues that this country is facing. And, you know, I'm not completely happy with Hillary and the way she has reacted here, but I have been an early supporter of the wild man from Brooklyn and Bernie Sanders.
Right.
And I still think that Bernie is right there on the issues.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to be able to become the candidate, but stranger things have happened.
Right. I mean, take us back again 4 months. Hillary Clinton had what everybody thought was an insurmountable lead nationwide. She was leading by huge numbers in Iowa, the first caucus state, New Hampshire, the first primary state. Her lead has shrunk quite a bit. She's behind Sanders in Iowa, behind Sanders in New Hampshire. The third quarter fundraising came out recently. Sanders almost pulled even with her in terms of fundraising.
28 to 26 million.
That's right, which is very good. And he has as much cash on hand as she does, because...
And his donations were small
That's
donations by over 500,000 people, almost 750,000 people, while she got a lot of big money from PACs.
Exactly. So she's got a big machine getting big PAC money, and it's costing her a lot to raise that money. Other polls also suggest, by the way, and there's a great piece recently in the New York Times about this, is that, to use that well-worn expression, her support is a mile wide and an inch deep. That people who support Hillary Clinton are not excited by her, but they support her, whereas the Bernie Sanders people are enthusiastic. And at the end of the day, I always say passion is important, because it's going to take passion to get people to come out on an Iowa caucus night, and passion to get people to show up and volunteer. And she doesn't have that.
And on election day, look at what happened 2 years ago on election day.
Yes.
The showing was terrible.
Yes.
We have to get people motivated to vote.
Yes, and Sanders is doing that. He's speaking to the issues that I think most people find important, about economic security. It's about taxes. It's about health care. I always like to say it's about the plight of the average person who gets up in the morning, goes off to work, and tries to play by the rules, and they feel like they're being squashed by big business, by Wall Street, by pharmaceutical companies. And so Sanders is talking about those issues. The Republicans are not. Hillary Clinton I describe her as a posture, is that this week she came out against TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
But would she have ever done that if Bernie Sanders hadn't come out first?
No, because she gave 45 speeches, or 45 times she came out in favor of it, and now suddenly she's against it. Well, she's against it because we have the first Democratic debate coming up in a few days, and because that may be the position where more Democrats are than she is. And so she seems to shift her positions for what's politically popular at the time. I've never seen her shift her position to take a position that is not on the side of the polls.
And, and that's a very dangerous way to pick a president. That's all I can say.
Yes.
Bernie, you know what Bernie Sanders stands for. There's no doubt about it. He doesn't necessarily go on late night television and play games or show a sense of humor, because he's so motivated and so intense about the troubles that we are all facing, that he won't really drop himself to that level.
He won't, but he still resonates with the people. This past week, he was in, I think, somewhere in Massachusetts. 26,000 people showed up to a rally. He's bringing out rallies of 10, 20, 25,000 people. Real rallies, not staged ones.
And the good part is there's a lot of young people that are coming out. And boy, if we don't get the young people out, get them motivated and get them to vote, we're in big trouble in this country.
Right, and that's critical because right now, those under the age of 30 have an incredibly low voting percentage, even compared to, let's say, going back 20 or 30 years ago when we look at the younger people. This is a generation, the millennials, that is really fed up with politics, really fed up with the status quo and want to see changes. And part of their disgust takes us to another part of sort of our starting with Republicans this week is the House of Representatives. With Boehner having stepped down, they're trying to find a new Speaker of the House, and everybody thought it was going to be his hand-picked or hand-anointed successor, Representative McCarthy. He has said no, he's not going to do it. Basically ousted.
Well, he has said no for several reasons. Number one, because he told the truth about all these Benghazi commissions. There's been, 8 so far?
That's right.
Have exonerated Hillary, so now they're going to have a special 9th one. And it's strictly politics. As he says, look what happened to her poll ratings since we did this.
His guilt is to be honest about the partisanship.
And Rachel Maddow did such a great job on him the other night, where she took example after example after example of him being unable to deal with issues. He can't even speak about them, where he fumbles his way through them. I think the next day is the day that he said, I'm not going to.
That's right. Either that or it was Donald Trump that caused him to step down, whichever the case may be, if Trump can be believed. But the point is now we're looking at a situation where the House is in disarray among the Republicans. I mean, we already knew that the House was dysfunctional in the sense that they're unable to pass legislation because, in part, the Republican caucus doesn't have sort of a position on a lot of issues outside of no, but now they can't even pick their own leader, and this bodes exceedingly badly for them going into the last 15 months, 16 months of the Obama administration.
But of course the Republicans did such redistricting chaos 2 years ago and made such favorable moves in terms of positioning their incumbents that there's a real problem there.
Yeah, even though we're now seeing polls that are starting to suggest again that Americans would prefer Democrats to control the House of Representatives. The gerrymandering, the number of safe districts for Republicans, makes it incredibly hard for the Democrats to retake control of the House of Representatives in 2016.
Which throws us into your new book, which we haven't seen yet, but which we're really looking forward to.
Yes, yeah, and what it's mostly focusing on is presidential politics, because what I became fascinated with is how the fact that over the last several election cycles, we literally know it's the same states. It's Florida, it's Ohio, it's New Hampshire, it's Colorado. It's a small group of states that seem to be where all the action is. 40 states are over. For example, barring some kind of catastrophe or miracle, there's not going to be a chance that a Republican is going to win New York or a Democrat's going to win Texas. Just not going to happen. And so it's these 10 states, and it's a book that tries to explain why we're down to only 10 states that truly matter in presidential races. And furthermore, within those 10 states, we know it's only about 10% of the population. It's those swing voters. It's younger voters. We used to call the suburban soccer moms.
Or the independent voters.
Independent voters. That's where the presidency is. So it's 10% of the voters in 10 states that really decide who's going to be president of the United States. And when we start to now assess presidential possibilities from that perspective, we get a different picture.
That's chaos.
That's
Israeli politics.
Of course it is. Of course it is Israeli politics, where we're down to small numbers of people who really control the outcome. But here, think about it, that we have a situation now where if we actually start to put head-to-head, we look at Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and let's throw Joe Biden in as a possibility, and they do head-to-head against leading Republicans. What we've, especially in those swing states, we find that Clinton actually loses in those critical swing states.
I saw that this week.
That's right. Bernie Sanders, in some situations, does better than her, and Joe Biden actually beats the Republicans. And so we're looking at a very interesting pattern emerging here. If the whole presidential election is about just these few states here, Hillary Clinton, if she's the nominee, runs significant risks of not winning the presidency.
And will Biden come in? Will he come in? Is there something going on behind the scenes, or is he very genuine about the chaos? Chaos is not turmoil of his own.
The personal anxiety of his family life.
Right.
When I saw him on Colbert, I thought he was genuine.
I did too.
I think he's somebody who's really anguishing between sort of his family and I think his ambition or duty or sense of duty to run for president. What I think is going to be critical is the next 2-3 weeks. One is we have coming up soon the first Democratic debate. Sanders will be there, Clinton will be there, Webb will be there, others. Clinton will have enormously high expectations. She's supposed to win this one hands down. If she doesn't do a good job there, and then if at the end of the month they're going to have another hearing in the House, I think on her emails. If she doesn't handle that well, I think we're going to see Biden enter the race, because at that point there'll be a lot of people worrying and saying, well, God, she didn't do a knockdown against Sanders. That the email Benghazi controversy is not resolved. I think Biden then uses that as a possible opening to come into the race, to kind of be the white knight.
Well, it remains to be seen,
right.
Which is a very cliched statement,
of
but
course.
It certainly is. Now, some of the other things that we have to talk about. There was another college shooting today. It's like, oh yeah, where did this one take place? Mm-hmm. Only one was killed. Wow, that's not too bad.
That's right.
What an attitude. What an attitude we have gotten. How hardened we have gotten when we can say things like that. What do we do about that? We have to fight the NRA. We have to fight Ben Carson. We have to fight people like that. We have to fight this mentality where 8 people died from gunshots in England last year, and 31,000 died in this country. Hello? Doesn't that wake anybody up?
Yeah. It's how you break this cycle from a perspective of sort of legislation, I don't know. We have, according to the best opinion polls, somewhere between about 85 and 90% of the American public, and that's equal with Republicans and Democrats, who believe at a very simple step, universal background checks. Now, it's not going to solve everything, but something is simple.
It's a start.
It's a start, that's right. But the point is, we know that there is overwhelming public opinion support for a very simple first step, yet we can't even get that far because the NRA has such a stranglehold. And so we need to figure out how to translate this enormous public support. People really do want gun control, do want to do something.
And in the 4 states that made background checks, crime has gone down. Gunshots and killings have gone down markedly.
It does. It works. We know it works. But how do we translate that into policy that moves Congress? I only wish I had the answer. That's the depressing thing. To me, at the root of all evil is if we were going to do one master reform in this country, it would be to get a grip on the role of money in politics. It's the money in politics that drives everything else. Many, many years ago, when I was with Common Cause Minnesota, a group that works on campaign finance reform, I had the pleasure of bringing Archibald Cox out here, the special prosecutor fired by Nixon during Saturday Night Massacre. And Archibald Cox had the greatest line I ever heard. He said, "The rules about money in politics are the rules that determine the rules of the game." And what he meant by that, he said, if the rules that decide who gets to give money, how and for whom, decide everything else in terms of politics.
Citizens United, which opened the floodgates to big corporate money.
Right.
And in many cases now, it's hidden donors.
That's right.
We don't know who is giving this money. It could be foreign money.
That's right.
Do we want that controlling American elections? I don't know. I don't
either. And so to me, that would be the first reform. If you could break the role of money in politics, you could break the NRA, and you could break a lot of the other corporate interests. Because right now, we're looking at these corporate interests giving money not just to Republicans, but they're giving money to a lot of Democrats too. I mean, Bernie Sanders isn't taking their money, but we're seeing a lot of other Democrats, and therefore they don't have the will to take on Wall Street or the NRA either.
Well, John Klein used to be a regular here. He doesn't come back anymore, and he's retiring. But interestingly enough, John said that he had to raise $5,000 a week.
Yep.
I think that's what it was. And this is 10, 12 years ago. And that became predominant. And his legislating, I mean, obviously had to take a back seat to raising money constantly. That's not the way to run a government. And, you know, you look at these countries in Europe that have free education, free health care, gun laws, and things like that. And they look at us and they say, you know, we're still the Wild West.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, his numbers, John Klein's, are low now. He's not running for re-election. It's an open seat. It's a swing seat. It's one of the very few swing seats in the country that Democrat or Republican could pick up. My bet will be by the time we finish the story of the 2016 elections, the 2nd district in Minnesota, which is where we are right now, will be a $12 to $15 million race.
I have no doubt.
Yeah.
I have no doubt. And again, money in politics.
Yes.
Now I understand that Jason Lewis just filed, so we have yet another Republican filing.
That's right.
We have 2 ladies who have filed on the Democratic side.
Correct. Jason Lewis brings with him a Rush Limbaugh personality. In fact, he used to fill in for Rush Limbaugh when he was on vacation, former conservative commentator who will try to run, I would say, significantly far to the right of even where John Klein was in terms of the 2nd district.
Oh, I would think so.
Yes.
Just based on some of the things he has said.
Yes.
And having listened to him over the years. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Right.
I didn't think he was going to get in, but it will certainly give people a marked choice.
Yes.
Because either of the Democratic candidates, and there may be even more, will certainly be on that side of the spectrum, and he's on the far right.
That's right.
And you know what the problem is, Dave? We haven't gotten to this whole list of things
I know.
that are driving me crazy.
Yeah.
We have 25 seconds. Where are you going to be on December 18th?
December 18th? I don't know. Why?
Come back here.
I will.
Okay.
I will do it. And we can go through more of this list plus other things that bother us.
They'll come up at that time.
Great.
Professor David Schultz.
Thank you for having me again.
You.